Inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
All right, well, a few technical difficulties can't stop us from getting started, though. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Brandon Kamerman, filling in for Gary Harris. We'll update Gary's status coming up later in the program, but first we got to update our sponsor on the show, Buffalo Rock, with a clean Pepsi. All right, Rodney. Well, of course, the big deal last week was the NFL draft. The first Alabama player taken in that draft, kind of a surprise to some, was Marlon Humphrey, taken with the 16th overall pick to the Baltimore Ravens. But that kind of started an Alabama run, and that followed with Jonathan Allen being taken 17th by Washington. Then 2 picks later, O.J. Howard at 19. And then Reuben Foster taken with the 31st overall pick by San Francisco. 4 players taken in the first round. That was sort of about where we thought, maybe 4, 5, or 6. Came a little bit later than we were thinking. Let's take a look at some of the players taken. Right there, you see it. That's the second round. So we talked about that first round. In the second round, Cam Robinson taken with the second pick of the second round, 33rd overall. He is going to Jacksonville. And then linebacker Ryan Anderson is going to join Jonathan Allen in Washington, taken with the 49th overall pick. Dalvin Tomlinson, the 55th pick. He's going in the second round. Nice for Dalvin. Some people thought he might slip to the third, maybe even the fourth round. He goes second round to the New York Giants. Tim Williams, the linebacker, going to Baltimore. He'll be with Marlon Humphrey. And then Darius Stewart, also in the third round, going to the New York Jets. Last Alabama player drafted over the weekend was Eddie Jackson, taken in the 4th round by the Chicago Bears, the 112th overall pick. We do know since the draft we have 3 undrafted free agents in Garrett Dieter and Corin Curvin, as well as Cole Mazza. Possible some other players will also be signed as undrafted free agents. But overall, you know, I would say the biggest thing about it is you have these players who a lot of people were saying were going to be top 10 picks. Reuben Foster, Jonathan Allen, maybe even Marlon Humphrey, O.J. Howard, slipped a little bit to the 16th, 17th pick. We got to remind people, they still have 10 people drafted in the first 4 rounds of the NFL draft. Still pretty impressive. But you go back to last year when they had only 1 player taken in the first round, Ryan Kelly, some guys who slipped a little bit there. There was talk about a perception that Alabama players are maybe overworked a little bit here at Alabama. Yeah. What do you take from some of these guys maybe slipping a little further than we thought?
Yeah, I really don't know about that. I mean, certainly I know there's been a lot of discussion about that, but when you look at it, obviously, I didn't expect Jonathan Allen to slip all the way to 17. I think he's much better than that, but that's where he was picked. I think it's a really good pick for him in the long run, though, because when you look at it, I think, you know, he's a guy that you don't really have to light a fire under Jonathan Allen, but if you did, I think this even would motivate him. I think the Redskins are getting a great player, not only in him, but then they also get Ryan Anderson, who, as you mentioned, was picked in the second round. And then you mentioned Marlon Humphrey going to Baltimore with the 16th pick, and then later them getting Tim Williams. So some of the Alabama players staying together. I think all of them are great picks. They have opportunities there to really be successful.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. You mentioned it. Allen and Anderson going to Washington. You also have Humphrey and Williams going to Baltimore. Some similar picks. Also, Corin Curvin was signed as an undrafted free agent by Tampa Bay. That's where O.J. Howard went. So I think it's always nice when you see Alabama, the Alabama contingent. And then plus, of course, they're joining a huge Alabama contingent, which is already present in the NFL. So, you know, we kind of addressed this last week in terms of which players we thought might have the most potential at the next level. What do you think about fit? I know that's hard to say. You know, we're not here to talk about the NFL and NFL teams, but who do you think maybe ended up in a pretty good situation?
Well, I think when you look at, I think several of them. I think O.J. Howard. I mean, when you look at being picked by Tampa Bay, they have the great young quarterback, obviously, Jameis Winston. They have a lot of other weapons around him. I think O.J. is going to really flourish there in Tampa. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to be able to show off what he can do, you know, catching the football. And, you know, I'll say this about O.J. There's a lot of people that talk about how he was underutilized. Well, you know, there are a lot of other players here at Alabama, too. I mean, you had Derrick Henry running the football throughout his career. You had some other really good running backs. You had some other great receivers. And I thought that maybe he could have caught some more passes. But the key with him is this. When he got here, he was basically a high school wide receiver. He learned how to play tight end. They developed him physically, but they also developed him as a blocker. Had he not done that, he would not have been nearly as valuable in the NFL as what he ended up.
The other thing about it, too, is with O.J. Howard, underutilized, and what ended up happening, he ends up going first round of the draft. He ends up winning a whole lot of games in a national championship here at Alabama. So underutilized, well, it seems to have paid off, and he ended up in a pretty good place.
He really did, and I look at it, they talk about the numbers. I think he caught 45 last year, whatever it was. Came up big in big games. Obviously, his junior year had that great championship game. He had a good championship game as well this past year. But, O.J. Howard, again, he's a guy that when you look at him as he continues to develop, he's going to be a great NFL tight end because of his ability that he's learned how to block. He's learned how to become a physical player because I'm telling you, when he first got here, when he came out of Autauga Academy, he was primarily a big guy that was basically a wide receiver, played like a wide receiver. So the development he got here, extremely valuable for O.J. Howard.
I'm looking forward to seeing these guys at the next level. I think O.J. Howard will have a pretty big role with Tampa Bay even early on in his career. Well, other than the draft, the biggest news for Alabama football came today. The announcement of a 3-year contract extension along with a $4 million bonus for head coach Nick Saban. The contract guarantees Saban coaching through the 2024 season, making him 73 years old at the time that contract would be up. Along with the extension, Saban will receive, as I mentioned, the $4 million bonus and then also $4 million that will be spread out through the length of the extension. He's entering his 11th season with the Crimson Tides, won, of course, 4 national championships. I think everybody knows this. Has 65 NFL draft selections. Other coaches received raises as well, including the approval of some of the new coaches' contracts, like Brian Daboll and Joe Panunzio, as well as Mike Loxley, new contracts, along with Director of Athletics Greg Byrne. So, I'll say this. We know we're preaching to the choir here. There's people out there saying, so he's making $11 million? That's a lot of money for a head football coach at a college program. Let's just put this to bed. I mean, this guy deserves that amount of money.
Absolutely. Might be underpaid, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of people say maybe I'm crazy for saying that, but, to be honest with you, I mean, look what he's done for this entire state. There's no question about that. And, you look at a guy like Jim Harbaugh. What's he making, $9 million now? And, I mean, what has he really done? Not that he's not a good coach, but what has he done? He hasn't really done anything yet. So to say that Nick Saban should not be higher paid than Jim Harbaugh, it's tough to say.
And the other thing with Nick Saban, too, is it's not just the wins and the national championships. What he's done for the university, increased enrollment, 13,000, I think about 13,000 difference from where he started to where he is now. A lot of out-of-state students who come here, and a lot of the interest in this university. It's a great academic university. Also, there's a lot of interest because there's national publicity when the football team is on nationally a lot. And then furthermore, what he does for local businesses in Tuscaloosa, I think the city of Tuscaloosa has to feel pretty good with this football team doing what it does because people come out here.
Local state economy. I mean, let's just be honest. The phrase around the country is roll tide. I mean, that's really it. And it's not that it hasn't been that before because we know that Alabama's had a tremendous amount of success. But where they were in 2006 and then he gets here January of 2007 and where they've come, it's been amazing. I mean, there's no question about it. Is he worth that amount of money? Absolutely, he's worth it.
All right, well, we are having some technical difficulties. As you can see, some of our videos aren't playing along with that. We're going to try to get that fixed. But in the meantime, we're going to go to a commercial break. We want you to give us a call, though. You know how to get a hold of us. Right there, you see it on your screen, 348-WVUA, 348-9882. Give us a phone call right now. We're going to get you on soon. You can also email us or tweet us at #TITV. Rodney and I will be right back coming up after the break. Welcome back to Tider Insider TV. Associate men's basketball coach Bob Simon was relieved of his duties. After 2 years with the program, the former Providence associate head coach was let go, as first reported by Charlie Potter of Bama Online. So after Avery Johnson brought in John Pelfrey last year as an assistant, he'll have another vacancy to fill before next season. So we'll be interested to see. All reports are that he's going to get going on that pretty quickly because obviously recruiting is a big role, and this is a big time for recruiting in the basketball season.
Yeah, I think that's obviously very important. You want a guy that certainly has a lot of connections in the recruiting And I think that's really important. I think that was one of the keys with Bob Simon coming in initially. But, Avery Johnson deciding to move on, and certainly he's going to hire somebody, bring somebody in that's got a great reputation as a recruiter.
All right, well, we'll have to see about that. Welcome back to TITV again. Brandon Kamerman alongside Rodney Orr. There's no beating around the bush with the Alabama baseball team. This season has been a disappointment. The Tide is 2-19 in the SEC, 15-29 overall after last week's sweep by LSU. Head coach Greg Goff mentioned he wants to look forward, not backwards. I think it's easy at this point in the season to say, man, what happened there and what we could have done there and this could have worked out. He's saying, you know what, we still have some games ahead of us, including a weekend series against Auburn coming up. So that's always a big series, and you want to finish strong and obviously start to create some winning culture. I want to address something that has been brought up a lot to me. I've seen the tweets, I've gotten the phone calls about whether or not Greg Goff will be back next season. This is his first year at Alabama, and I know a lot of people are bringing up that Greg Byrne wasn't the AD when he was hired. I will say this. I know specifically that Greg Byrne didn't know Greg Goff before he was hired here, and Greg Byrne was he was part of the process in hiring Greg Goff, even though he was still at Arizona at the time and Bill Battle was in charge. They did consult on the Greg Goff hiring. The other thing, too, is I have to say this, is what message are you sending other coaches when, after 1 year, even though it's been a pretty rough year, you let head coach Greg Goff go? You're also telling other coaches that, maybe we don't give the time that you need. And I think that's something to take into account as well.
Sure, absolutely. I think so. But, again, you're talking about a guy's first year. He just got here. And I mean, again, I don't think there's any question about this. This is not a cut at Mitch Gaspard or the job that he did. Certainly all due respect there. But, the program had slipped. And there's a reason why they made a coaching change. And I think that, this program could certainly use an influx of talent. Now, is that to say Greg Goff will be an ultra success here? I don't know. But I think it's too early to make that determination based on the guys that he inherited. Not that they're not good players, but he hasn't had an opportunity to fully develop his program. And I think you have to allow a guy the opportunity. If you're going to hire him, you've got to give him the opportunity to bring in his players. Now, I know a lot of Alabama fans, because I see it on TiderInsider.com, they're very, very disappointed about the play of this baseball team, and they think there are some issues within the program. That happens occasionally. I think you have to be careful not to overreact in the first year. Allow Greg Goff to get his guys in here, get his program going, and then you make your evaluation. That's just my feeling.
You mentioned a lot of frustration, though, among Alabama baseball fans. There was a lot of frustration among softball fans last night. One of the most heartbreaking losses you could have. Top of the third, Bama trailing by 1. That's Bailey Hemphill hitting what appears to be a solo home run to tie the game. But what are you taught to do? Rodney, I know this. You played Little League Baseball, right? What are you taught to do when you hit a home run?
Actually, I'll be honest with you, I did the same thing.
Oh,
when I was
okay, all right.
12 years old.
Feel
I did
better,
the same
Bailey.
thing.
All right, we got Rodney doing the same thing. But of course, what ended up happening was Bailey didn't end up touching home plate. She left for celebration. Again, this was the tying home run and missed home plate. Patrick Murphy was pretty frustrated, as you'd imagine. One of the strangest things you'd ever see. Anyways, Alabama, while they did go on to take the lead, they did end up losing this game 5-4 on a walk-off. It's the third straight series loss that the Alabama softball team has had. A really tough way to go down. They've had a lot of tough breaks for them this season. I go back to that rain out at Tennessee where they had a chance to salvage a series. They were up in that game and ended up losing. And so anyways, Ole Miss ends up getting the win. We got a lot of phone calls about this Alabama softball team. I had a feeling that might happen. So we're going to go to break and we'll come back with some of those phone calls. Again, if you want to get a hold of us, 348 WVUA 348-9882. You can also get it onto Twitter, social media, hashtag TITV. We'll be checking that, and we'll be right back. Well, the Green Bay Packers picked up former Alabama defensive back HaHa Clinton-Dix's 5th-year option on his rookie deal. It's the first time Green Bay's ever picked up a 5th-year option. That's worth noting.
I thought all the Alabama players were flops.
Yeah, all flops in the NFL.
Every one of them.
Clinton-Dix hasn't done anything, just a Pro Bowl and, 5th-year option picked up for the first time in Green Bay history. He was taken in the first round, you'll remember, of the 2014 NFL Draft. The option keeps him under control by Green Bay through the 2018 season. That's a great point, Rodney. There's still some pretty good NFL Alabama players. We're going to head to the phone lines right now, and we'll start with Plato in Panorama. Plato, how you doing?
Hey, good evening, guys. I'll start off the softball discussion. I thought Coach Murphy's coaching job last year, getting a team into the World Series that had some players not playing up to their potential, was probably his best coaching job. This year, if you look at the statistics, we're in conference play. We're hitting under 200 as a team and near the bottom in runs scored. And I think it's a shame because the tandem of Osorio and Littlejohn are probably the best tandem that I can remember him having since he's been there. But the other thing, I think that it's apparent that it'll probably be harder for us to continue to be a dominant program in softball, because if you look at what's happened around the conference, the facilities and the other schools bringing in some of the top-notch coaches that they brought in has really made parity in the league a real thing that we'll have to deal with. And so I think it looks like we're going to have to scrap for recruits probably a little harder than we have in the past because our lineup does not have the Kayla Hunts, Caleb Rose, Haley McClinney's that we were used to having up and down the hitting order. So.
Yeah, sure. Plato, I think that's very fair to say. We're seeing this a little more with some of these sports that aren't football and basketball, some of the really big sports. Is for years, at least recently, Alabama has been one of the handful of teams around the country that was one of the real dominant programs. It's starting to spread out a little bit, and especially in the SEC, as Plato mentions, there's a lot of great teams in this is the toughest conference. For years it was the Pac-12. Now it is Pac-10, I guess, at the time. Now it clearly is the SEC. It's just one of the elite conferences, and we see it year in and year out now. So I think that's fair to say it's going to be some more challenges in recruiting. That being said, I still think Alabama has a lot to offer. Patrick Murphy is still one of the best coaches in college softball. Alabama has great facilities here. It's got great history when it comes to softball. So I still think there's big draws. And the other thing is they still have some great players here. I agree. I think their offense is probably below where Coach Murphy would like it to be. And yes, their pitching staff is fantastic. You'd love to have a great offense go along with it. I brought this up before on the show. They lost Leona Lafayette, Haley McClinney. Also, Demi Turner's been out with an injury for much of this season. And those are going back to last year, three of the best hitters in college softball that are no longer on the team. Demi Turner is still on the team, hasn't been playing. I think that's fair to say. That is tough. That's going to be tough for any team to replace two of the best hitters in program history.
Yeah. Again, he's done an outstanding job. We know what Patrick Murphy can do. We know what, his program is. I don't think there's any question about that. Obviously, they've had their struggles, and you pointed out several of them this year tonight. But I'll say this, too. Patrick Murphy's will get the program back. And I agree with you, Plato. It's a lot more competitive than what it was. Obviously, you look at all the other schools that you mentioned going out, hiring big-time coaches, putting an emphasis on softball. It is going to be more competitive, which makes it more difficult in every area.
All right. Well, we're going to go to Alabaster, talk to our good friend John. John, how are you doing?
Oh, okay. Hey, guys, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, man.